Top 10 Misconceptions About History. Hello there, YouTube. Welcome to class. I'm Mr. Narrator, also known as Mr. Top 5 Best. Now, in my class, it can be boring, but at least you're learning, right? What are we learning, you may ask? Well, you see, we're going to be learning about things that actually aren't true despite the history books saying otherwise. What's that, you may ask? My 4th grade teacher, Mrs. Helm, was wrong about Christopher Columbus? Well, yeah. Teacher's completely wrong. And to prove your teacher's wrong, watch as we cover 10 historical events that didn't happen the way you think they did. Let's begin, shall we? Welcome back to Top 5 Best, everybody. Before this video starts, I want you to go down right now and hit that like button. Also, while you're down there, make sure to subscribe for more videos. If you do subscribe, then also hit that bell icon next to the subscribe button so that way you get every piece of content that this channel puts out. Now here's a real treat. If you have liked this video and you are subscribed to us, write down in the comments I subscribed and I'll reply back to 100 lucky individuals. Number 1. Pocahontas. Paint with all the colors of the wrong. That's right, most everything most of us know about Pocahontas is wrong, and that's because most of us get the wrong information from the 1995 Disney movie of the same name. For starters, Pocahontas wasn't her real name. Her real name was actually Matoaka, and Pocahontas was just a nickname meaning playful one. She also never saved John Smith's life by putting her head on top of his. The only source that claims that is John Smith himself, and well, he was known for being a bit of a liar. In his original journals, this event is never mentioned, but Smith likely made it up in a letter that he wrote to the Queen of England herself. The love story between Pocahontas and John Smith is a perfect thing for a movie, but in fact in real life she would have been around 10 or even 11 years old. Yikes. The real Pocahontas was kidnapped at age 17 by the English and kept prisoner for a year, where she married John Rolfe, who had a child with her. They then moved to England, and since her body was not used to that environment, she caught an illness and died there. It's the circle of life. That isn't the right movie. This is really way more depressing than I expected. Number 2. The Alamo. The Alamo! Okay, I'm sorry. The Battle of the Alamo is one of the most patriotic stories there is in the entire U.S. history. It is considered one of the biggest, if not biggest, events of the Texas Revolution and the event that started the Mexican War. Stories of the Alamo are likely embellished as the stories of heroes like Jim Bowie and Davy Crockett. In reality, Jim Bowie was an old and depressed drunk who likely came to the Alamo because he wanted to die, and promptly became sick before the fight. He was not in the same shape as he was when he fought in the infamous sandbar fight. The tale about them not being able to leave is also false, with about 20 people, including men, women, and children, leaving before the battle took place. And of course, one of the most famous stories involves Davy Crockett's death. While most stories and movies portray him as dying a frontier hero's death, swinging his rifle and surrounded by dead Mexican soldiers, however, some sources actually claim that Davy Crockett was actually captured and executed, and one highly controversial account by a Mexican soldier claims that Crockett actually surrendered. So, were the heroes of the Alamo really heroes? Nobody really knows for sure, unfortunately. Number 3. Ben Franklin discovers electricity. All historians agree that Ben Franklin was a genius, but there are many misconceptions and inaccuracies surrounding Ben Franklin's discoveries and inventions. One of these has to do with his discovery of electricity and its conductive properties. Many movies portray him as attaching a key to a kite and flying it through a storm, when in reality there is no evidence that that actually happened. We do know that he published his diagrams for metal lightning rods, but there has been no evidence, not even a journal mention, that prove that he ever actually did his famous kite flight. In fact, if the lightning had actually traveled down the metal key, it would have probably hit Franklin and electrocuted him, leaving us with our smartest founding father, deep fried. Aside from really that, he just did the metal lightning rod thing, and that could have served the same function. What probably started out as a mistake in retelling a story turned into one of America's most famous stories about one of the smartest people in the United States history. Number 4. Columbus tried to prove the Earth was round. Oh boy, here come all the flat earthers and round earthers, when in all honesty, the Earth's actually a velociraptor. We all know that story of Columbus. You know, the story that he set out sometime in, a year before we were all born, that the Earth was round. He sailed the ocean blue and found America, am I right? Well, as you might have thought, that's completely wrong. Not only was the fact that the Earth was round accepted by just about everybody in Columbus's time, but the ancient Greeks were actually trying to calculate the size of a spherical Earth in 300 BC. Even better, every sailor worth his salt knew that the constellations rose as they traveled south, proving that the Earth was round. Columbus wasn't trying to prove that the Earth itself was round when he set sail in 1492. No. He was trying to prove that sailing due west was the quickest way to get to the Far East and their precious spices located inside the ports of India. Not only were his calculations hilariously wrong, but he and everyone on his ship would have starved if he had not drifted into the Caribbean. Columbus didn't even know he was in the Caribbean. He thought he was in Asia, and he continued to think that on every trip to America. Also, little known fact, Columbus is a jerk. Seriously, look it up sometime. Number 5. Napoleon was short. Everyone knows that Napoleon was a short dude, am I right? Well, he may have been one of the most powerful men of the 18th and 19th century, but he was famously remembered for being dwarfishly small. After all, that's where we get the term Napoleon complex. Well, over time it appears that history books listed Napoleon's height as 5 foot 2 inches, which does seem short, right? Well, they fail to account that the French foot is entirely different than the American foot. When historians actually correctly converted these figures, it turns out that Napoleon was 5 foot 7 inches, which is far taller. That's not NBA standards by any means, but he certainly isn't the shorty that we thought he was. Another fun Napoleon fact, during the end of the war, his hemorrhoids were so bad that he had trouble even riding on his horse and commanding his troops. Ooh. He may have been a great leader, but he will be remembered as being short, but a lot of people are trying to change that fact. I don't even know why people are still arguing about that. He's kind of dead. Leave it alone. Number 6. Lincoln wanted to end slavery. This is a somewhat controversial fact, but it is a fact. Most people believe that Lincoln wanted to end slavery, but historians agree that this was not his purpose. Lincoln hated slavery because he was known to be a very moral man, and believed that it was wrong, an idea ahead of his time. But there was more to the Civil War, as you'll see in our next fact. However, Honest Abe had his thoughts set more on the state of the country. He was willing as president to set aside his ideas and keep the country all together, which he swore to do at all costs. See, Lincoln didn't fight the Civil War to end slavery in the South. In actuality, he fought the Civil War to reunite the broken country, which he could do through force and military might if he had to. As he stated in a letter concerning his motivation for going to war, he said this: "If I could save the Union without freeing any slaves, I would do it. If I could save it by freeing all the slaves, I would do it. And if I could save it by freeing some and leaving others alone, I would also do that." He was entirely anti-slavery, of course, but he had his focus on keeping the country together. Number 7. The Civil War was started because of slavery in the South. The Civil War was one of America's bloodiest and confusing conflicts in their entire history, and the politics behind it are even more complicated. Although many people believe that the Civil War was started by the slavers, the truth is that it was a number of things that led to the Southern states seceding from the Union and becoming what we know as the Confederacy. Even though the Southern states left because of their lack of representation in slavery, that is not the reason the war started. The North was definitely anti-slavery, but they cared far more about preserving the union of the states and the slavery issue. The South would not have attacked the North had their respective territories been respected and armies left immobile, but Lincoln swore to keep the vision of a united America, which is why it is a single united country today. Slavery was undeniably an important issue, but many politicians in the North had their focus on uniting the states once again. Number 8. Vikings had spiked helmets. Man, you look at those Vikings, they got spiked helmets just like the Dovahkiin from Skyrim. Isn't that cool? Dovahkiin, yeah! Well, Vikings are one of the coolest subjects in history to make it short, and, well, they've got a fairly good TV show on AMC as well. However, we'll be sticking strictly to the historical view of the Vikings this video. In almost all history books we all had throughout our schooling years, they were always depicted as having huge bodies, leather armor, and giant horny helmets, kinda like the ones in Skyrim. See what I did there? See what I did there? This image came to become synonymous with the Vikings, and that is how culture came to see them. However, the reality is quite different, with most historians now agreeing that there is no evidence that Vikings actually had horned helmets. In fact, there is very little evidence of what Viking armor actually looked like, as their armor was primarily made out of material that was biodegradable. It's hard to find out a good example. Historians actually speculate that a horned helmet would actually be impractical when it was having a tendency to be caught in branches. Number 9. Einstein failed his math classes. This is a good inspiration story, but it's really nothing more than that. A story. Although yes, Albert Einstein was a late bloomer who was socially awkward and, well, late to talk, he most definitely did not fail in his math classes. This is a good tale to tell to someone who is struggling with math, but it's really nothing more than a sweet, sweet lie. I mean, come on, are we really supposed to believe that the man who invented the theory of relativity couldn't pass Algebra 1? Really, the Animaniacs episode that featured Albert Einstein has more truth to it than this. Number 10. Isaac Newton discovered gravity when an apple fell on his head. Newton was one of the most brilliant and ingenious mathematicians and inventors of his era, but he was also a good storyteller. He would delight his friends at Cambridge with his story at dinner parties, except it got a little different with each retelling. The original story in Newton's diary says this: "Why should that apple always descend perpendicularly to the ground?" he thought to himself, occasioned by the fall of an apple. He sat in a contemplative mood. Why could it not go sideways or upwards, but constantly to the Earth's center? Assuredly the reason is that the Earth draws it. That sounds a whole lot different than an apple hitting him on the head, am I right? And that is our video for today, everybody! Tell me, what was your favorite misconception? Is there anything we got wrong? I mean, more wrong than these, at least. Tell us in the comments. Remember to like and subscribe for more lists, and hit that bell to be notified whenever a new list comes out. Thanks again for watching, and I'm signing out.